Modern dating advice is doing more harm than good to young men. One common trope we hear in the manosphere, red pill, and other degenerate modern men is that the top 20% of men get 80% of all the women. And that's the reason why you can't seem to find a good woman anyway. The reality is this is false, and it's a big lie. And I'm going to prove it to you in this video for the reasons why there is a rise in male sexlessness. If you think that 20% of men are getting all of the women, you are living in your head. Let me prove it to you. Here's an article of the Institute of Family Studies, and I'm going to show you some studies on this, and we're going to break this whole thing down. Because modern dating advice is immoral, it's degenerate, and it's doing a lot of damage to young men. The reality is the top 20% of men that these modern dating coaches sell you on, they're promiscuous guys. These guys aren't good husbands. These guys aren't good fathers. They're not even good men. Okay? And they're sleeping with the other 20% of women in the society nowadays who are also degenerate and promiscuous. So they're getting their same measure. They are what they are. And they bond with each other. This is the reality. Most men and women are having sex within relationships, within marriages, in a monogamous situation to someone they're committed to. End of story. And there is a small percentage of men and women who choose to be celibate. In this case, the video is focusing on the celibate men. And it's not really voluntary. It's involuntary in their own minds because their own lifestyle, their lack of integrity, and really the men that they are, repels them from ever getting a good woman. So they go on the internet and they're looking for reasons to justify why they can't seem to find a good woman. Let's break this down. We're going to go through the reasons why there's a rise in male sexlessness. I'm going to go through some stats on median ages of marriage to compare. And then we're going to get into the conclusion. How do you turn this around? So let's start with the introduction. Many young men claim it's just impossible to find a good woman. So they direct their attitude towards blame. And who better to blame than promiscuous women and also promiscuous men instead of themselves? Incel communities believe a few key facts about modern dating practices. First, they believe that women have become very sexually promiscuous over time to the point that virtually all women are promiscuous. They use the nickname for these promiscuous women and they call them Stacys, right? Secondly, they believe that a small percentage of males, right, the top 20% of men, are the ones called chads who sleep around with all the women and they get all the girls. They hoard them all, which is why they can't seem to find a woman because the winner takes all, right? These alleged handsome masculine chads are helped along by social media, Tinder, and all these other appearance-focused dating scenes that gives them all the sex, leaving the rest of the men with nothing. This is their worldview. Not only is this wrong, but it turns out to be wrong in an interesting and informative way. Common phrases we hear from modern men is, these incels, is that, oh, it's just harder to find a woman if you're the average guy. Everyone's promiscuous nowadays. Or they're all the same. So as a result, they become incels. The reality is there's only a small percentage of men and women that are actually celibate because they want to be, because they either just want to focus on other things in life or they're serious about finding a good spouse and they're not going to give their body to anyone. And that's not most people nowadays. When I see men that are celibate, it's usually because there's something off with them. Either a knowledge gap or their very lifestyle prevents them from finding a good woman. So let's now go into the studies, right? I'm going to link this down below in the description so anyone who wants to pick my brain, they can go and read it themselves. Okay. How much sex are people actually having? First of all, what are the actual trends in sexual behavior? For this article, I'm going to focus on individuals aged 22 to 35 who have never been married, and particularly within males, right? Men. Most groups of people aged 22 to 35 are having the similar amounts of sex. Something between 60 to 100 encounters per year. And no, this isn't referring to a 60 or 100 body count, which is disgusting. It's referring to the amount of times they've had sex. This can be within a relationship, within a marriage, which does happen. Obviously, the fraction of this is going to be people who do sleep around. Never married people have the least sex, about 60 to 80 encounters. Again, this can fall into the range of men who are just not married. They have a girlfriend, fiance, and they don't believe in Christian values, so they have sex before marriage, and they do it a few times. Or it's some of them actually do one-night stands, hookups, things like that, which is wrong, but they do it. Historically, never married men have actually reported higher frequency than never married women. Promiscuous men are actually more to blame than promiscuous women because they can get away with it more. A promiscuous woman, back in the day, she was pregnant, she's had a kid. The other guy can just flee to another country or move state and he's gone. But we look at recent studies from 2014 to 2016 GSS samples. Never married men now actually have a lower sexual frequency than never married women because of anti contraception methods. Women can protect themselves more if they choose to engage in that lifestyle. So there's a way out, right? It's wrong, but that's what modern people are doing. However, this is actually mostly because men are reporting less sex, not because women are reporting more sex. Female sexual frequency has actually been quite unchanged. So the theory that women are sleeping around at a higher rate than men is just not true. All these stories you hear about the Chads and the Stacys and these modern men and women, they're all sleeping with each other. It's just a sub-fraction of promiscuous people. And these videos are placed on the internet that are getting millions of views, so it has a spotlight on it. Most couples that are normal, their private sexual lives are not on social media, are not on the internet. Especially when you look at traditional couples, religious couples, Christian couples, even in Muslim couples. For example, they live a private life. They get married, they have their kids, and they don't have a high body count. They're not out there sleeping around. All of these problems we're seeing in culture is from modernized couples. End of story. Okay? So, what we really need to understand is the percentage of men and women that are not having any sex and why. Look at the graph. Okay? The blue is men, solid line. Okay, married, dotted line, never married. See the difference? Aged 22 to 35. Okay? So the share of people of each status who reported not having sex in the past year show interesting trends that seem to support the basic incel account of changes in mating markets. Recent years have seen increasing sexlessness for never married men. Celibacy is always and has been stable among women. But male sexlessness is rising among married men. A lot of married men as well who have health issues, they marry the wrong woman, they're also having a sexless marriage. But the incel story of rising male celibacy is actually confirmed because more and more never married young men are experiencing long sexual droughts. But on the other hand, incels are basically wrong in suggesting that all women are promiscuous because female sexlessness has been stable. Okay? However, there have been two other surveys done from the Natural Survey of Family Growth and National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey have also asked about sexual behavior. And the results do not confirm the trend seen in the GSS that I showed before, up here. They have different questions and different survey populations, so could be differently comparable. Okay, here's how the charts compare. Again, this is linked down below, you can check it out yourself. But the graph shows while there is a reason to think that there is a share of never married young men that are going sexless, it could also be that the sexless share among these young men is about as stable or is even falling as the other graphs show. The incel account of events may be true based on one of these studies, the GSS, But on the other two, it doesn't seem to add up. It doesn't hold its weight. So this begs the question, do a few sexual alphas dominate the sexual economy? Even if we assume the data is correct, is that actually true? The answer is no. How much sex would a 20% of men need to be having? That's some Genghis Khan type stuff. That means the average guy in that 20% range would be having 2 days on a regular basis to maintain that kind of share. That's how many women the guy has to be sleeping with. But in reality, the top 20% of most sexually active, never married young men, they have between 50 to 60% of the sex. They're just promiscuous. That's all they are. It doesn't correlate to everyone. And it's about the same for women. And the shares stabilize over time. The top 20% of promiscuous men account for 60% of male sexual partnerings. Thus, whatever the change is, that a few men, these few chads are hoarding all the women, depriving the incels of finding a woman, it just doesn't hold its weight. It's promiscuous men with promiscuous women, as I'm showing you in this image. Because the modern men, if we look at on the myth section, they think, okay, so this guy's a 10 out of 10 in looks at the top. And this guy's a 9, this guy's an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the 10s, 9s, and 8s, the most good-looking men, they can get every woman. They can get the 10s, the 9s, they can have access to all of them. And apparently, the women that are 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're ignoring all the men and they're going straight for 8, 9s, and 10s. What quality of women are these girls if they're all sleeping with the promiscuous men? Not wife material. But the reality is, this is a myth. It's not real. The reality is, if you look at the top 20% of promiscuous men to women, sure, a lot of them may be attractive, but they're also engaging with promiscuous men and women. Because monogamous men and women are not engaging in this lifestyle, gentlemen. And there's a small percentage that are not even being intimate at all. And even then, of those promiscuous men, a small share actually report having paid for sex. So these guys aren't even only having sex with promiscuous women, they're having sex with literal prostitutes. These men have no self-respect. These men aren't even worthy of being called men. This is degenerate behavior. So if you're a guy watching and you're like, oh no, I'm missing out because these other men are taking all the women. These guys are not only hooking up with women that have no dignity as themselves, but they're getting with prostitutes. They're paying for sex. How is that masculine? How is that alpha? How is a masculine man paying for intimacy? That's the lowest of the lowest. You're better off being celibate in that case, right? That is degenerate. So if you think sleeping around with a high sexual frequency is so desirable, it's actually not. They're hiring prostitutes or they're making themselves into male sex workers. It's degenerate. So if it's not about these people, the 20 to 80% stealing all the women, what's actually going on? The reality is there's a decline of youthful marriages. This is the real problem, gentlemen. The main factor driving this trend is that there's a decline of marriage among young men. Sexless men are sexless primarily because of delayed marriage. And they're delaying marriage, I personally believe, based on my studies of observing men over the last few years and working with clients and such, is because men are not taught how to prepare to become a husband. It's not because men are afraid of marriage or afraid of divorce. It's because they don't know even what it means. They don't know how to lead a marriage. They don't know how to find a good woman. They don't know how to court her, how to understand her. So they just don't want to get married. And they're stuck in this perpetual state of like boyhood. They're like teenagers with jobs and careers. But they never mature. Marriage always makes the man. This has always been that way. It's one of the male initiation rituals in society. Young men used to be married, young in their 20s. It's not happening anymore. Young men are falling to pornography and lust and other pleasures. They're turning away from women. They don't know what to do because they're not receiving guidance. No one has taught them how to be a husband. And you look at most parents, their own marriages suck. So most people in the younger generation, my generation, or even younger than my generation, I'm getting older now, they've grown up with bad role models. Fathers that never taught them how to be husbands, so they don't replicate that in their own life. That is the real end. That's the bottom line. Why men are not getting married. The second thing is, not only if they do not know how to be husbands and prepare for that, how can they even distinguish if a woman is wife material or not? So even then, they don't even want to get involved. And the ones who do eventually settle and they, shit, I'm getting old, I need to find someone, they settle. Because they have a knowledge gap and they just rush into the first one that comes their way. And then they replicate the same miserable marriage that mum and dad had. Okay? All of these fears that men have, all of these worries and doubts of, I don't know how to be a husband, I don't know how to lead, how am I going to get married, I don't know what I'm doing, it just leads to delayed marriage, which really delays their maturity. It used to be that men and women would get married first, they'd grow together and build a life together. Now people aren't doing that. So it's not just that they're delaying marriage because of a knowledge gap. A big thing is modern education. Sexlessness is rising with modern education. Men are going to college, and unless you're getting a professional degree, which is wonderful, they're getting into these degrees that they're never going to use, and they're putting themselves in massive debt. And then they're working off that debt and they're focusing on their career, which is wonderful, but they're not doing that with a woman by their side. So they're delaying marriage. They're delaying the responsibility of building a family. And all the stress and the worry of focusing on paying off that debt or getting into that career, they push it to the side. And then they think when they're older and stable financially, now I'll find a woman. So they're getting married when they're older men. And they missed out on those crucial years of growing old with a woman. You get to see she's genuine, she's by your side, she's not a gold digger. But you're missing out on that. So now you're 30 plus, you're burnt out, 10 years burning, trying to pay off your debt, trying to get your career to subsistence. And now you think, okay, I'll find a woman. But you still have a knowledge gap. So then you end up failing there as well. Screws you up even more. This is what's going on. Okay, there's a very small percentage of men that are voluntarily celibate because of religious views and Christianity, Islam, whatever you want to call it, right? Or because they actually value their dignity and they want to find someone good. That's not the case for most guys. Most guys would love to find a woman, but they're just, brain rot from pornography, knowledge gap, and trauma from mum and dad's failed marriage, or they're just focused on their career and they think, okay, I'll get married later on in life. And if you go deep into this, into like modern education, and even for a lot of young women, they're getting into modern women actually, especially if you look at countries like America, Canada, the UK, they're responsible for the biggest and the largest fraction of student debt and loans and such. Not just the men, women actually carry more than that. So again, a lot of guys are thinking, do I want to marry this modern woman if she's carrying all this debt? So there's a lot of mess. There's a lot of parents that have failed the younger generation, and it really is a problem. The next one is obviously rising parental co-residency. A lot of young people can't move out. Things are very expensive. They are not learning about financial literacy. They don't know how to build passive income. Again, they're in debt. So they're home. They're living with mum and dad. They're trying to figure it out. And because of that, they delay marriage. They delay having a family. Another reason why some people are involuntary celibate. They can't find someone. They're still at home. Okay. 8% of never married young men live with their parents are involuntarily sexless. And another 7% voluntarily so. Again, there's different variation there, but that is another reason. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you can't find someone, or you're not looking because you're still living at home, or because you're in college and you're paying off your debt, or you're stressed with your studies, or you're trying to build a career and you're trying to make it financially. The real reason, as I stated, is because men are not being taught how to become a husband. They're not taught that you can find a good woman. They're not taught how to communicate, how to lead, how to treat a woman, how to understand her. They're running to porn. They're running to, perverted sexual fantasies. And this is all pushing them away from actually finding a woman. If you knew how to make $1 million, you'd go out tomorrow and make it, right? If you knew that you could follow this blueprint and find a good woman, you'd go out there and find her and marry her. If you knew what it meant to be a husband and prepare for that role, you would, and you'd be better equipped. So again, you have a knowledge gap. That is the biggest reason. The article makes good points. Yes, 20% of men are not sleeping with 80%. That 20% is with the other promiscuous 20% of women, and they have each other, right? But the real reason why men are delaying marriage is not because the women are being taken by the 20% and no one can have access to them. And no. It's because the average man, in this case I'm focusing on men, have a knowledge gap and they don't know how to be a husband, and they don't understand how to distinguish between the qualities of a good woman or if a woman has red flags. So they don't know, is she a wife or not? Am I even a husband or not? And because of this knowledge gap, they're paralyzed and they never take action. That is the real reason. Even for the women listening, you could say it's the same thing. Feminism has convinced women that they don't need a man, that they're modernized, that whatever, right? They're independent queens that can do it all themselves. Sure, again, you can avoid those women. It's very easy to spot them nowadays. I have videos on that on my channel. But at the end of the day, using the excuse that, 20% of men, they're taking all the women, that's why I can't find a woman, is an incel cope. And there is some truth into you being in debt and financially things are harder nowadays. There is some truth into if you're young and you're trying to make break, and you can't make it out and you're still living with your parents and you think, okay, I can't find someone yet. There's some truth in that. But at the end of the day, Genesis 2:24 in scripture says, for this reason a man grows old, leaves his mother and father, cleaves to his wife and becomes one flesh. It used to be men and women would live home with their parents, and when they found someone they wanted to marry, they would go out and leave their mum and dad, then join together with their spouse and marry. That's actually biblical. But that's providing you have a good family. And I understand not everybody comes from a good family where mum and dad love each other. So you have to move out young. You have to leave. You have to find a way out and start from zero. No inheritance, you're in debt, you're struggling, and that pushes off marriage. I understand those are legitimate reasons. I get it. But ultimately, the bottom line is, when you start figuring these things out, the real reason why you're not serious about marriage is because you have a knowledge gap on what it means to be a husband. And because you have a knowledge gap on how to tell whether a woman is wife material or not. Because you can't even tell if a woman's right for you, you just rather not deal with it. Because you see the divorce rate. You see mum and dad's failed marriage. Everyone you know has failed marriage nowadays. They settle, they don't even love each other. Why would you get involved? They have a knowledge gap too. So you ain't learning it from them. You have to learn from a mentor who's already done it, who has a good woman, who understands marriage, who knows what it means to be a husband, who has a successful track record. Find someone in your community, a pastor, an elder, someone who's done it, someone who walks the talk. Hey, even I can mentor you. I teach men. I have a lot of my clients have found good women because of my mentorship. It's what I've dedicated myself to, right? But again, that is the bottom line. And I want to make that really, really, really clear. That is why guys are delaying marriage. And then they're frustrated. And then they're bitter. Another thing I want to share is, I'm from Europe, so I know Europe, for some Americans, not a country. There's multiple countries in Europe. But I'm going to show you some stats. Median age of marriage in Europe and the US from 1960 to 2021. So that's a 60 plus difference, 61 year difference. In the US of A, in America, in 1960, the average age for men to get married was 22 years old. And for women, it was 20. In 2021, it's roughly about 30 for men and 27 for women, which is technically speaking not bad. Still a drastic change. Europe, it's actually gotten worse here. It used to be that men would get married around 21 years of age in 1960 and 19 years old for women. My grandmother was married at 18. My other one was married at 22. Sorry, 21. Same thing for my grandparents, young. Great-grandparents, young. My girl's parents, they got married young, like 19, 20, great-grandparents, 19, 20, very young. And they stay for life. Yes, there's variation, but that was average. That wasn't the normal. In the 1970s, 1980s, around that age range, even in the UK and most European countries, if you were a 27-year-old man or woman who was still single, they'd see you as there's either something wrong with you, you were promiscuous, or they'll ditch you, or you need to get married ASAP. Because why are you not married yet? And the problem now is it's so normalized because we've delayed marriage, we've delayed maturity in men and women, all these health problems, all this degeneracy, taking God out of the schools, broken homes, broken families. Hey, people get married when they get married, right? That's what's happening now, and that's a problem. Because with delayed marriage comes delayed child rearing. Yes, a lot of couples now, their boyfriend, girlfriend, they ain't married and they have kids. Fine. Kids out of wedlock. Fine. Single mum, single dad. Yep. Kids, bastardized kids growing here and there, right? Mixed kids here and there. That's what's going on. Marriage gives children stability. And if you do it God's way, husband and wife can have a blissful, romantic love life. Passionate. If you marry the right person. People got this. People understood this. Boys and girls were raised from a young age to be husbands and wives. That's why they were getting married so young then. They wanted to. The communities, the schools, the parents. If you didn't come from a good home, right? The community, the church would help you. Or, there'd be something in the school system or the universities. They would raise men and women to be husbands and wives. And they'd push the youth to get married. No one's doing that anymore. It's a fucking free-for-all. Do what you want. Find someone when you find someone, sleep around, get 20 broken hearts, get 5 STDs, have 2 kids over here and there, waste 20 years of your life with the wrong people, and then find someone. And you've got all this trauma and you're fucked up. Oh, and throw in porn addiction and fucking pornographic romance novels for women into the mix, and you have a fucked up generation. Europeans went from marrying at 21 to 19 to right now in 2021, as you can see on screen. The average age for men is 36 and for women 34. In countries like Sweden, it's like 37, 35 for women. The lowest age for marriage, I think it's like Poland, where it's like 27 for women and 30 for men. And even then, that's low in European standard. It's really, really bad. What happened to Europe? Become very, very godless. Really, really bad stuff. And this is the problem. You can use the excuse all you want. Oh, it's family. Oh, I came from a broken home. Oh, I'm in debt. Oh, I'm struggling here. I have this problem and that problem. No one's stopping you from getting married. You can go to a courthouse with a priest or a pastor and pay for a very cheap service. You don't have to do this stupid Hollywood crap where you pay 20 grand plus, or you go into debt or take out bloody loan to have an expensive wedding day. And given the fact most people marry the wrong person, that shows you, does it not? Do you think people back in the day in Western Europe were having fucking expensive weddings? Maybe if you were wealthy. Rarely. Most people weren't. Most people even shouldn't. Use that money to build together and have a family. People aren't doing that. They become so individualistic, living for themselves, that marriage is the last thing on their mind. Until they get old and they start getting worried. And they start getting lonely. And then they still fucking settle because they can't even get that right. That's how stupid and screwed up people have become. And it breaks my heart. It has to change. From 21, median age of men, to 36. What are the guys doing from 21 to 36? Jerking off, watching porn. Oh, I have 5 broken hearts, she left me. And you do it to your bloody selves. That's the thing. Same thing for the women. Smart women understand, get married when you're young. Smart men understand, marry when you're young. Find someone when you're youthful. Don't waste it. But you are wasting it. And that's why that's why this median age is going up. You date someone for 6 years, you're wasting her time. She's wasting your time. You're not having honest conversations about what you want, about where you're heading. And that's why you're all screwed up. And that's why 36 years old, oh, I guess I should get married. 34 years old, oh, my eggs are drying up, bet I should get married too. You have to take accountability. So in conclusion, the statistics that I've showed you only affect modern men and women, brainwashed by feminism have a knowledge gap, or ultimately not serious about turning their lives to Christ. And I'm going to say it right now. Traditional values come from faith. If not, you're playing a dress up. And you are a risk for a traditional woman to marry you. Likewise, ladies, you are a risk for a godly man to marry you if you're just a feminist trying to pretend you're traditional. You have to have faith in how the Creator designed, God, the Creator, our Father in heaven, how He designed us to be, to relate to one another, and how He designed the roles of marriage and men and women. When you accept that and that becomes your identity, how God intended it to be, all of this stuff sorts itself out. So for the men and women that are serious about finding love, take accountability and immediately begin taking action to become and to seek a godly spouse as soon as possible, are the only ones that are going to have a future. Don't waste your time trying to figure it out. If you're struggling and you want mentorship, you want help, you want advice, head over to my website, you book a free call with me, all the way down here. And I'll see if you're eligible for my mentorship. Because at the end of the day, you have to take accountability. Think of all the years you would have missed out wasting your 20s finding a woman when you're 40. It's still doable, you can, but isn't it better to grow old together as you build your career, build your business? She's with you when you're struggling, you know she actually loves you for you. You guys are you're wasting it. Don't be that guy who only focuses on living for me. We were never meant to live alone. Boys and girls grew up under the yoke of mum and dad. They would turn bloody 18, 19 years old, they'd find someone, and at 20, 21, 22, they'd all be married. They'd have their own families, and that's how it was. People would leave the home when they found someone, and then they'd be sorted. I understand for most modern couples it's not like that, but somewhere along the line you have to say enough is enough. I draw the line and I'm setting a new standard so that my children can have a better start, my grandchildren. And it starts by you marrying right. Guys, you have to take accountability here. Don't waste your youth thinking the wife's going to fall from the heavens. You have to go out there and find her, but you've got to become a husband first. Do not waste your time. This is only going to get worse in the next coming years, but you know what? It will start to get better in the next 20 years after that. That's the years when our children will be born, and they'll live and they'll be youthful, and it's time for them to find someone better. The question is, will they come to you and your wife for advice? Or they look at you and your wife and think, I never want to be like mum and dad. Mum and dad are fucked up. I want to find help somewhere else. You're watching this video because your parents fucking failed you. Excuse my French. They failed you. You can't go to mum and dad for relationship or marriage advice because they hate each other. They settled for each other. And yes, before someone asks, yes, there are young people who marry and they still marry wrong because they have a knowledge gap. What I am saying is, ideally, if you are young, which is your prime, use that prime to fill in your knowledge gap and find someone good for you. And it's going to just be a delicacy. You'll love that. You'll cherish that for the rest of your life. Don't waste it. Don't fuck up like your parents have, or other people you know and other people you see. Be different. Stop delaying marriage. Start taking it seriously. Get married young. Find someone that is good for you. Okay? Don't waste your youth. Don't try and figure it out. You don't have to have 10 broken hearts. Figure it out now. Fill in your knowledge gap. Seek mentorship. That is what I recommend for you. So with that said, there you go. Like, that's the video. It's really, really simple. 20% of men are not having 80% of the sex. They're having sex with promiscuous women that are just like them. That's reality. That's the truth. And that's the end of it. You don't have to be this guy. Don't use this as an excuse why you can't find someone. Look at yourself. It's only harder to find a good woman, if you're not a good man. And if you're not a good man, it's time to get right with God and fill in your knowledge gap so that a good woman can recognize your worth and your value, and you'll be set. Because if mum and dad didn't prepare you to be a husband or a father when you're a boy, when you're a teenager, and help you find someone, and you're watching this and you're in your 20s or your 30s, fill in your knowledge gap now. Prepare yourself now. Seek mentorship now. Fill in now so that you are prepared. Then you'll find someone. And then when you succeed, you can pass the knowledge down to your sons and daughters. And they will be okay. With that said, hope you enjoyed the video. God bless all of you and your families. Share this with someone who's going to extract some value from it. Okay? See you all in the next one.